we'll go in here in 1 second. Great. We had 144 people sign up tonight, which is great. Okay, so I'm going to go we're up to 55, so we're still missing 30 folks, but hopefully they'll join us. I'm going to share my screen and get going again. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us. We're going to go back to Misty here in about 25 seconds. Misty and Pete, 1 second. And hopefully the gods are with us.
Can people see me, or they just see the slide? They can see me.
Okay. They can see you.
Yep. And then we're live on Facebook, and I just need to go to present mode. Okay, let's go. We're good. We're back, kind of. Most of us are back. Back to Pete and Stacy. Sorry, Pete and Misty.
Okay, hello, hi, back. We are back again with our revolution. This is, I see we still have a lot of people with us. This is the key to good organizing, being persistent. So thank you for sticking around to hear us out. I don't know how long I have, so I'll just say a few things and then we can move on to the rest of the panel. What do I want to say? I think what I want to say is everything that has been happening, even if we are frustrated that it's not enough, that it's not all the things we know we need, every single thing that happened in the American Rescue Plan, every single thing that's gonna happen in the American Jobs Plan and the American Families Plan is because of progressives. Joe Biden, our president, would not be talking about housing, would not be talking about direct payments, would not have been extending the child tax credit to give people more cash payments, essentially a cash payment every month for a child that you have, like Social Security for children that essentially exists in other countries, doesn't exist here. None of this would have been possible without this groundswell of progressivism that has taken over the country in the last 6 years. And I know it's not enough, so I'm not sitting here saying that we're getting all the things we want. But I gotta tell you, I am in the halls of Congress. I am on these phone calls with Senator Sanders. We are talking to, high-level folks in the White House on a regular basis, and they're listening, and they're taking input. This new American Jobs Plan, for example, that the president released, we know, and it's not quite going far enough on climate change, and there's still some room there. It's got some incredible tax policies in there. Policies that the senator has, ending subsidies for fossil fuel companies is a huge thing, and that would not have happened without you. That would not have happened without the consistent organizing. All the people who ran for office maybe didn't make it across the finish line. We are changing a narrative in this country about what is possible, and we're really holding more centrist Democrats accountable to our vote. And I think that is so important to remember as we're having these conversations. I'll talk about a few other things that we've been really following that the senator cares about. I talked to you a little bit about Medicare. So again, inching forward every way we can. We're being very creative as the new chairman of the U.S. Senate Budget Committee. The senator is thinking of all the ways that he can use this position to move us forward on our huge goals that we have as a movement. So Medicare for All, expanding it, lowering the age, and of course getting drug price negotiation in there. We're talking a lot about wind and solar and how do we expand that? How do we electrify our grid and make sure that we can move to EVs? How do we make sure low income people, working class people get full access to getting rooftop solar, get full access to EVs? What's it going to take to get there? That's a conversation we've been having a lot in the last couple of weeks. We haven't forgot about students. We know that students and young people in this country are strapped with student debt. So we are also, pushing every single day to encourage our president to embrace, at the minimum, this $50,000 debt forgiveness. We need it all, but if we can get that, again, we are on the path to getting there. So a lot of the work that we're doing is kind of like opening up the potential to the full thing, So I don't want to sit here and bullshit you. I don't think we're going to get all the things we want through this administration, but I do think that we are going to make very, very serious traction on the issues we care about. Housing, Green New Deal for housing. We've been working with the new Congressman Jamal Bowman on a Green New Deal for public schools. Refurbishing schools, making sure our schools are a safe, clean place to go and learn. So we've been working on those things. A couple of other things. Postal service. We really care about the postal service. The senator's having regular conversations about that. We believe, like schools, postal services help keep rural places thriving. So we've been talking about a lot of creative ways of how to make schools and postal service places a place of community, right? There's something called like community schools where you go in and kids can get healthcare, they can see a doctor, they can get their teeth cleaned, they can get, they can sit down with a therapist. What about being able to take your mail there, right? So we've been thinking about some creative ways in which we can try to keep rural areas across this country thriving. So that's definitely a huge piece of what we're doing too. One last thing I'll just mention, and I'm happy to take questions or other other things that people want to hear about, is that, Senator Sanders said before the November election that if Joe Biden wins, he'll be the most progressive president since FDR. And what I think, I'm not a history buff, but Pete D'Alessandro is trying to make me one, is that Joe Biden, President Biden, has put out in his first few months of being president one of the most aggressive and progressive pieces of legislation to help working people. There was 0% in the ARP that went to corporations, that went to tax cuts for the wealthy. 0%, nothing in that $2 trillion package went to the rich and the wealthy. It went to the working class people in this country. That is an LBJ, that is an FDR move. And we got a lot of ways to go. We got to keep organizing. We got to keep the pressure on the administration and our friends and people who may not be our friends to go further. We got to get that $15 minimum wage, which we're also still working on. But we have made huge progress. And I really think that progressives have to take a step back and see how far we have come. You got to celebrate, you got to have a little joy in this movement, pat ourselves on the back, and then we just grind back and keep working, keep pushing to go further, keep encouraging our friends to run for office, and keep organizing. So I would just want to say the reason that President Joe Biden is doing anything that looks similar at all to our former presidents who we've liked, like FDR and LBJ, is because of you. It's because of our movement, because of our revolution, because of people like Senator Sanders and other people on this call who have been pushing and pushing and pushing about what we should expect out of our elected officials. So I'm very proud of where we're at. We got a lot of work to do, and I'm excited to be here with you all.
Hey, Misty, we have a few questions from the chat, if you could take a couple. How about the child tax credit in the American Jobs Plan? Is that supposed to be permanent?
So there is a move right now being led by Senator Cory Booker to make it permanent. And actually, I think the Democratic caucus is pretty aligned on this. I think it's something we can get done. 60 votes maybe hard, but I think we might be able to get there. So right now it's not, it's just through the end of the year, but there is a pretty large push in the Senate right now to make that a permanent expansion.
Thanks, Misty. Another question from Mika Covington. How about the Equality Act? Is Bernie pushing that?
Yeah. I mean, this is going to go back to what's kind of dominating the headlines right now, right? Is the 60 vote threshold. So if we're going to get, minimum wage done or the Equality Act, there's some different ways in which we're exploring to get that done, like maybe tacking it onto a must-pass bill, for example. I think it's going to be tough to get even the PRO Act or the Equality Act or some of these really great pieces of legislation that the Congress is delivering us, with such a small margin in the Senate. So we either need to, there's a couple of options. I can't, talk about all the details, but what I can say is, obviously overturn the filibuster, which the senator has talked about publicly. We're in support of that. We have seen the tone shift a little bit on this, with the exception of our very good friend from West Virginia, Senator Manchin. But I think there's some other strategic moves that senators are talking about to get some of this other stuff done. It's going to take the full year, though. I want people to know that people are working hard, but the more pressure that we can levy, especially on some of the people who are holding out, there's 8 senators, for example, who voted against the raise for the minimum wage. They deserve to hear about that. That's going to be helpful to the senator to be able to continue to move these kind of agenda items forward.
Thanks, Misty. Do you have time for more questions?
Sure. I just don't want to take up the rest of. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe somebody else, Tom or Pete, or do we have time for more questions? Okay. How about defund the police? The call to defund the police. Where's Bernie at on that? This is a question, I believe, from Miranda Wilson.
I think, where the senator has been and what he's talked about is we fully believe that we need to rehaul the way in which our entire criminal justice system. And that includes making sure that money that is going into the hands of police officers to be used on, some of these huge military equipment and things like this should be really put into community resources so that we're responding to people in crisis with the people who are trained correctly on how to respond to those crises. So rather than having somebody who's clearly going through a mental health crisis or some sort of episode of some kind, my sister's schizophrenic. I know all about this. Anytime she is manic, what happens? 6 police officers arrest her, but really what needs to happen is she needs crisis intervention worker is what she needs. Right. And so I think that's where our big focus is on dealing with a lot of the criminal justice injustice issues we have in this country.
And Misty, I know we need to get rolling, but one more quick question. Filibuster reform versus budget reconciliation. Are we going to get anything passed with either one of those? Any more things?
With budget reconciliation, look, the senator, yeah. We're hoping so. We're ready. Our budget committee staff are ready. The senator is ready. We want to get this work done. The president has put out a pretty aggressive jobs plan. I know there's some weaknesses in it, but I am here representing Senator Sanders, so I will speak on behalf of him that, we like a lot of it. We want to get a lot of that done, and we will get it done in however we can. And if that's through budget reconciliation, we're prepared to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Misty. I think we're probably over time, but we really want to thank you. And I'm going to kick it back to the host here and let them give you a formal thank you if they want, and then we'll move on with the program. But thanks so much. I think everybody really appreciated you being on tonight. And thanks for your leadership.
Such a pleasure. Yes, it's so good to see everybody. I'm going to hang out for a little bit and listen to the rest.
Thanks, Misty. And we'll get you back because we're going to be around for a while. And I know you're going to keep pushing great things there. And there's going to be some successes to talk about, so we'll get you back sometime in the next year, or at least ask you to come back if you still want to.
I'd love to come back to Iowa.
We'll always love to.
Virtually, in real life.
I am gonna. Let me just kick it back over to Tom to introduce our next panelist and go from there.
Okay. Well, thanks, Pete. Our next panelist is really a remarkable guy who came back to his hometown, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and worked hard on a lot of local issues, and then became the first African-American elected to the Lynn County Board of Supervisors. And now he's in his second term, and he was one of the co-chairs for the Iowa Bernie 2020 campaign, and was also part of the Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force, specializing in the criminal justice platform. And over the last year especially has been helping with the advocates of social justice. in Cedar Rapids. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Stacy Walker. Take it away, Stacy.
Thank you, Tom. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Is that a yes? Thumbs
Yes.
up? Okay. Hey, thanks everyone so much for having me. I really appreciate being here and seeing some familiar faces. I'm very brief because there, quite honestly, are some that. I will say this. I think when I look at our revolution, when I look at what we're trying to do here, I'm inspired for a few reasons. I've been preaching for a long time that part of what we need to do as elected officials, as organizers, as people who believe in leftist progressive policies, is try to open doors for other people. Open doors for young activists to come into the scene. Open doors for people who've never been involved in politics before, who have good ideas. Open doors for them to run for office. I think we often get trapped in this mindset that only some certain kinds of people can run for office, and we need to move beyond that. We talked about pushing the party left. I agree wholeheartedly with Misty when she talks about just sometimes taking a moment to appreciate what you have accomplished. The progressive left in this country has completely changed the political dialogue. And it's not just members in Congress in easy districts or Democratic districts. Our president, Joe Biden, a man who is not known for his progressive bona fides, in many instances is sounding progressive on a lot of issues. And he's not doing it because he all of a sudden woke up one day and decided to be a progressive. He's doing it because the progressive left is getting better organized, and we are finding solidarity, and we are applying pressure in all the right places. I also want to give credit to Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal for the work she's doing in Congress and really building out the Progressive Caucus in the way that she has. She is she's bright. She's bright, and she knows what she's doing, and we need more sort of technicians like her, I think, in Congress. I want to skip down to a few things here. And I'm going to say something that I know will be unpopular, but that's what I do. I say a lot of unpopular things. My number one goal in dealing with the progressive left is to build solidarity. Build solidarity so that we can build and increase our power, so that we can do the things we want to do, like that we're talking about. Get to 60 votes on some of these tough issues, right? And what I want to caution the progressive left, and I think our revolution is really going to be in a good position to do this, is encourage the progressive left to be more uplifting of other progressives and other progressive organizations, as opposed to being quick to come up with a litmus test. And I actually mean this. I mean this when I say it. We've got to be more focused on building unity and building a coalition across the progressive factions. Understand that conviction who has a little different opinion on one or two issues. That is a surefire way to weaken our power, weaken the movement, and it's not getting us any closer to our goals. When we stand together, when we open the door to folks who may have supported other progressive candidates in the presidential primary, when we say, hey, we had our differences, but we can all be on the same page for Medicare for all. Hey, we had our differences, but we can be on the same page about raising the minimum wage. All be on the same page about the Green New Deal. That is exactly what it's going to take if we ever expect fully replace establishment centrist Dems, or at the very least persuade them to do what we want, because it's easy to not listen to a few people. It's a lot harder when we have a mass movement, and that's what our revolution is about. So I want you guys to stay encouraged. thank you so much for having me. And as long as you have an ally.
Yeah, great, Stacy. Just one question in here that keeps coming up is people want to know if you're going to run for higher office.
I was going to ask the same thing.
Well, people keep putting Walker for governor, Walker for Congress, Walker for U.S. Senate. Stacy, do you have currently any plans to run for higher office that you could share with us at this time?
They always advise politicians to never close the door on political opportunities. But I just believe in me, and I can tell you all that I'm to me and support that I've received. There is room in progressive electoral politics for us. I believe in term limits, even if they are not imposed. I will be.
Stacy, we lost Stacy. He had a very unstable connection. Pete, can you? I'm going to flip it back.
What I heard, I guess, unless I heard it wrong, what I heard was he's open to a draft. So let's keep those questions coming, and let's keep pushing Stacy into maybe thinking about running for office after his term is complete there in Linn County.
Good man. Good man, Pete.
You got it, brother. So I want to take this next time a little bit to do a quick introduction to our next panelist. And I'm really excited about this. One of the things that I've always believed, and I think the Bernie Sanders type of politics was centered around, is the idea that change never comes from the top up. It always comes from the bottom up, and that's why I'm really excited to introduce, maybe for the first time for some of you on this call, to Indira Shoemaker, who is a activist, a citizen organizer, who has decided that she's going to put herself out there and run for a city council here in Des Moines, in a city that is in a city that has a lot of progressive, great activists, but is in dire need of some progressive elected officials. And I first heard of Indira in a great article, and anyone on this, please Google the March 7th Des Moines Register article, which was my first introduction to her. I've had some conversations with her since then, and I have been more and more excited about possibilities with each and every conversation that I have had with her. And with that, I do want to say one thing here on my wall here. Anyone who's ever had to talk to me about politics for more than 3 minutes will tell you that they find out right away that one of my heroes is Robert Kennedy. And I have this old poster of his that I keep hanging on my wall that says, "The youth of our nation are the clearest mirror of our performance." And I just think that is a great way to introduce those of you who don't know yet to Indira Shoemaker, because if this is the representative of the next generation of leaders, then we are doing well, and we have a chance to do really well. And so with that, I'm going to kick it over to Indira, and I will ask, I know you have some stuff to talk about, and I'm looking forward to it, but I will ask, walk us through that kind of process from being a incredible community organizer into saying, I can turn this into electoral politics. I want to run for office. Because I think that's a really compelling story, and it says a lot about what the movement is.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say hi to everybody on the call, and thank you to Our Revolution Iowa for inviting me to speak today. it's an interesting story, right? First of all, my name is Indira Shoemaker. The race I'm running for is Des Moines City Council in Ward 1. So it's the northwest side of Des Moines. And it's an extremely diverse area. It's where I was born and raised. I've lived in the same house literally since I was 1 year old. I went to school down the street in the most diverse high school in the state. And I grew up Black, surrounded by a larger population that is 90% white. And in a society where corporations, land developers, and the generationally wealthy are the ones who control our government, right? And threaten our community's survival. So growing up like that, you don't get to not be politically informed. You don't get to grow up in the George Bush era and not have political opinions. That's how I grew up, but I didn't have a foothold in politics or in activism really until 2020. And that is when protests started kicking off in Des Moines for the first time in a way where something was actually happening here, but also in the first time when we were being met with extreme force and violence from our police forces. And that really rocketed me off to being extremely politically active, to organizing, to engaging in activism pretty much constantly since, the end of May. I've never had money or anything in my life. I've never been wealthy. I've never had influence. And I've always been told that my voice should be quieter, that I should be silent, that I should submit to authority. And all of that was completely shattered in May and June of 2020, and I never went back. So I started organizing with the Des Moines Black Liberation Movement in June, and started organizing later in August and September with Des Moines People's Town Hall. And through this organizing, I mostly focused on city council. And what I came to learn not only is that our city government is not interested in the voices of the people, but I also it was brought to my attention all of these horrible things that were happening in my city, while most of us look away and say things don't happen here. So what I learned is that in my city, houseless residents are being forcibly evicted and their belongings destroyed and their lives uprooted constantly so the city can build new development projects. That's happening in a few days. Another houseless camp has an eviction notice. I learned that our neighborhoods are suffering from urban food deserts, lack of affordable housing, crumbling infrastructure, and inadequate and inaccessible public transportation and public utilities. I learned that our city government is selling off its public housing to private investors and pushing off responsibility to a Section 8 program with a extremely long wait list that just keeps growing and growing. What I've been dealing with today, I know some people here in this call were at the Capitol today with me, protesting against bills that are being pushed to the House and the Senate. Some of those bills would legally justify hitting protesters with cars. Some would criminalize bringing water or goggles to a demonstration to defend yourself from the chemical weapons the police have been using on us in the last year. And that basically give more protections to the police when they use excessive force, when they violate our rights, and when they racially discriminate against Iowans. And this is coming just after a report in the AP that police use of force in Iowa increased drastically in the last year. But we already knew this because Des Moines has been among the cities with the highest incidence of police brutality per 100,000 residents in the nation since May 25th. This is something that we on the ground have been very aware of this entire time. But these are just the incidents of violence they enact through policy and through disinvestment in our communities. What they do invest in is direct, brutal, state-sanctioned violence, and that is invested in through the police. Today, I watched a young Black high school girl get tackled by a state patrol officer for asking for his badge number. Now she's being charged with assaulting a police officer. I sat there and watched as they twisted her arm behind her back, cuffed her, and pulled out a taser and pointed it at me and the crowd, who was demanding to know why she was being arrested. This is not new because it is a direct mirror image of July 1st when the Iowa State Patrol and the Des Moines Police Department marched a black woman through a crowd of protesters, and then arrested a black organizer who stood in front of them demanding accountability. It's a continuation of the tradition from June 22nd, when protesters were surrounded, beaten, and tear gassed, and then charged with the failure to disperse. This is in line with the trend that the Iowa Police Departments began in the end of May, when they began tear gassing protests, pepper spraying reporters, arresting people en masse, and aiming to criminalize free speech and defend their rights to abuses of power. But even more, this is an example of the violence that Iowa police commit in their day-to-day operations, where they criminalize Black and brown communities, and they commit violence against those in poverty and in crisis. So this is what we're up against in Iowa. I have seen over my lifetime, not just how this state has gone from a swing state to deep red, I have seen how the establishment, even through the Democrats, has undermined progress and prioritized the corporately funded status quo. I have learned that the center in America is so far right, and my eyes have been opened to how these forces operate on the city level and inflict violence against our communities, and how we allow them to hide in the dark and go unchallenged. So this is why I'm running for city council. I have to run to interrupt these violent forces. I have to run because our communities are only safe when police are made obsolete. And this must happen through directly investing in our communities, disinvesting in punitive violence, and disinvesting in incarceration. We must invest in community response teams, accessible housing, into food, into our neighborhoods. We must bring our communities from surviving to thriving, because we are struggling right now. We must invest in public infrastructure and transportation, into municipal broadband and public utilities to ensure a sustainable future in the face of increasing climate change and climate disasters. And we must, most importantly, shift power into the hands of the people. Now, I won't pretend that one election or any election is going to bring to liberation, and I won't want people to have power long term. So my campaign is centered around the idea of all power to the people. That is why through my campaign, we're canvassing our neighbors to ask first what issues people are facing in their lives, and to build our work around those needs, and to build infrastructure to give Des Moines residents actual decision-making power in their own lives. So to do this, we are building up a Ward 1 People's Council. This is a people's assembly with a direct line to true representation, not just one day after in an election, but true representation through the Ward 1 council person. And it's a decision-making body where residents can advocate for themselves, get their needs met, and claim the political power over their lives. That is all of our rights. So with all of this, I have to come to the conclusion that just being progressive and pushing for progressive policies is not enough. Advocating only for progress through the established system is not enough. We can't pretend that just filling seats and leaving the system intact is going to be enough. We need to be taking these seats and using that power to tear down oppressive institutions that exist to maintain the current social caste systems that starve and displace and commit violence against us to meet their political ends, that they use to maintain power, to hoard wealth, and to exploit labor. We must find those who will dismantle these oppressive institutions, and we must put everything behind them as long as they remain beside us. We cannot do this without people. We can't do it without the masses, without the working class, without Black people, without Indigenous people, without incarcerated people, without sexual assault victims, without young people who show up in the streets and yell, defund the police. All of these groups have to be included in our organizing, because when we abandon marginalized groups and when we abandon those demands, we recreate the oppressive systems that we claim to oppose. There's a new wave in America, in Iowa, of politically energized and politically active young people on the left. This is the new progressive base. We cannot convince them, we can't aim to convince them that working through this system is going to save us. If we don't speak to this young, active, leftist, progressive base, and if we don't fight to tear down these systems that oppress them, because they are built up from these marginalized groups, they will not be with progressives in America or in Iowa. So basically what I'm getting at is that we need to take power, we need to organize to bring the masses into their own power. And that is what I'm running for. And I have a very strong vision for Des Moines that I will do everything in my power to bring about. And I will also do everything in my power to bring that political power to the people of Des Moines and honor the demands and the needs of the most marginalized groups in Iowa.
Wow. Thank you. Mind blown. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Can you, there really wasn't any questions, just a lot of people loving what you're laying down. Can you tell people what is the best way that they can get involved in your campaign?
Yeah, we have, what we're looking for volunteers, right? So what we need most right now is canvassers. I talked a little bit about our canvassing strategy, but what we are doing is focusing on the neighborhoods in Ward 1 that are most ignored. Anyone who's familiar with Des Moines, familiar with like the north side of Des Moines, Beaverdale is, you know, the widest, wealthiest area in Ward 1, and it's the one that decides all the elections. What we're trying to do is go out into neighborhoods that are ignored, that are mostly populated with Black people, with immigrants, with working class families, and we need people to do that. We are aiming not to convince people that what we think is right, but to ask where they are and what they need, and then to organize those groups to have that real political power. So we just need people to sign up to canvass with us. We need turnout. That's the main thing.
Great. So somebody on your team dropped both a volunteer link in the chat and also if people want to contribute to your campaign. So thank you so much, Indira.
Thank you.
Are inspiration to all of us. We need more candidates like you, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to kick it back to our co-hosts, Tom and Pete, for our next guest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Indira. And before I go on to our next guest, I just really want to say that Indira is exactly the kind of person that would make a great OR endorsed candidate. And as she was talking, I'm sitting here in Iowa City, and certainly my first goal would be to work for Iowa City candidates on the city council. But just knowing and learning more about Indira's platform and what she's working for would encourage me to, financially support her, or perhaps, talk to some people that I know in Des Moines who may not know her, and we can cross-pollinate that way across the state. And that's what I hope one of the great, outcomes of our Revolution Iowa could be, is taking our local groups and informing the rest of like-minded people on a statewide level, so that we can give some financial support, or we can give some volunteer support, which is sometimes lacking when you're trying to build a campaign from scratch. So thank you, Indira. I'll move on to Kimberly Graham, our fourth panelist tonight. And she's worked for a long time as an advocate for neglected children and parents. And I first, really came to know her through her U.S. Senate campaign last year in the Democratic primary, and was thoroughly impressed, and was glad to support her. And now she is exploring a candidacy for Polk County Attorney, and we're certainly glad for your run last year, and excited for possibilities to come in the future. So take it away, Kimberly.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Kimberly Graham. I ran for United States Senate in 2019, 2020, endorsed Senator Sanders, and basically if you followed our campaign, then you already know kind of all the issues that I'm about. For the last 20 years, I've been an attorney for abused and neglected kids here in Iowa, and also an attorney for parents, often who have addiction issues and lose their children. I work with them to help get their children back. So I've been representing parents and kids for a long time. The early part of my career, I did some criminal defense work, court-appointed criminal defense work. Last 10 years, I've been mostly focused on the juvenile court work, which I really love. So when I was running for U.S. Senate, I was literally running one night, listening to a podcast, and it was Jonathan Van Ness, Getting Curious. If you haven't listened to it, you should. And he was interviewing Rachel Rollins. Rachel Rollins is the, they call them district attorneys in other jurisdictions, the district attorney, the county attorney for Suffolk County, which is where Boston is. And Rachel Rollins has made some amazing progressive changes to policy in that office. And I was listening to her talk about the things that she was doing. And I literally stopped running and my mouth hung open. And I was so excited and just impressed with everything she was doing. And hadn't really looked at ever running to be a prosecutor because I've been a defense attorney for 20 years. That's kind of where my heart's been, and never really had any interest in becoming a prosecutor until I heard about the things that Rachel Rollins was doing. And then I started finding out there was this movement. A lot of people have been endorsed by Real Justice PAC, which is founded by a lot of people who actually are associated with Senator Sanders and with our revolution at some point, various points. And they are recruiting and trying to find attorneys, progressive attorneys, to run against often incumbent, sometimes incumbent Democrats, sometimes Republican county attorneys or district attorneys. Because what I, of course, knew but just hadn't thought too much about was that the rubber really meets the road in criminal justice reform at the county attorney's office. That is one of your biggest bangs for your buck. So if you can get somebody to become a county attorney who has forward-thinking, evidence-based practices that actually keep our community safer, and no, that's not just locking up more people, that's the opposite, then you're gonna really get some traction. So even during the U.S. Senate, we still had a U.S. Senate campaign to finish out, but I was already thinking about running for county attorney because I was so excited about the possibilities to make real change. And the thing about being a county attorney is that, for better and worse, county attorneys have immense power. You can literally go in there and make your policy, and you do it and it's done. And so it's not like you have to get the votes like in the Senate. It's not like you have to get all these other people on board. If you can get into that office, you have the power to make a lot of changes. You don't have power over everything. You can't change the laws, for example, but you have prosecutorial discretion. You can decide whether to add sentencing enhancements to a charge. You can decide whether to charge somebody or not charge somebody, depending on the facts of the case in front of you. So there's a lot of things that you can do. So just to name a couple of those things, I mean, I could talk about this for 3 hours. Obviously, I'm going to try to keep it to like 5 minutes. To name a couple of those things, you can stop prosecuting low-level possession of marijuana. Like, just stop prosecuting it. There's a lot of progressive county attorneys' offices across the nation who have done just that. You can stop waiving children to adult court. Stop waiving children to adult court. And a lot of progressive prosecutors have done that. You can focus on having all the backlog of unopened, untested rape kits tested and processed. There are thousands. I recommend highly that you go watch a documentary called I Am Evidence. You can buy it for like $4 or $5 on Amazon Prime. I watched it last night. Back in, I think it was done in 2019. So these numbers are not that far off. There was over 200,000 untested rape kits in this country, about 4,000 in the state of Iowa. I'm guessing a lot of those are in Polk County, Iowa, because we are the most populated county in the state. And there's a lot of layers to that, but that is one of the most important things that we can do is get the backlog of rape kits tested and matched in CODIS, which is the DNA registry that's across the nation, because oftentimes there's a huge percentage of rapists who are serial rapists. So what does that mean? That means we test the kits, we find out who it is, we can go find them, get them off the streets. That actually makes us safer. And these rape kits are just sitting there. Nobody is doing anything about it. So that is kind of, to me, low-hanging fruit and something that needs a lot of focus. And when we stop focusing on crimes of poverty, we stop focusing on prosecuting people for stealing bread from Walmart because they don't have any money for food, or trespassing because they don't have a home and they're trying to get out of the cold. If we stop doing things like that, then we will have the resources to do these other things that are actually important and actually make our communities safer. So in short, again, I could go on and on and on, but in short, we need to reimagine public safety. reimagine public safety. And I want to read you guys just a quote real quick. This is from a Washington Post article from a couple weeks ago. It says, "We should think about public safety the way we think about public health. No one would suggest that hospitals alone can keep a population healthy, no matter how well they might be run. A healthy community needs neighborhood clinics, health education, parks, environments free of toxins, government policies that protect the public health, and more. Health is not about hospitals. Public safety is not just about police." And that is how we have been treating it. Like public safety is about police. It is far from that. There are so many other things that we need to do. And just one of them, and then I'll wrap up because I don't want to go on forever, is that there are these response units that have existed in Oregon for many years, in Atlanta for a few years. In Oregon, this crisis assistance helping out on the streets is called Cahoots. It's an organization that is where unarmed crisis workers from those communities go and respond to incidents like mental health crises. You know, Misty talked about her sister getting arrested. So instead of police showing up, it would be this mental health crisis unit or this Cahoots unit. If there's a homeless person trespassing, you know, this unit would show up and help get them into a shelter or connect them with services or see if they need any help and somehow try to help them. So we need to do more of that. And there's a lot of other things we need to do that unfortunately would not be in my power, you know, like Indira mentioned about food deserts. You know, I wish I would just be magic wand and I could, you know, fix things like that from the county attorney's office. But there's a lot of things that we need to do, and we're just not doing it right. Locking up more people is not making us safer. And one more thing that I want to mention real quick. I was at the Black Lives Matter protest at the Capitol this morning. I had to leave before my understanding. I left to go to a meeting before the arrest happened. I've now seen a video of that arrest. It didn't have sound, but I watched this video. I've only watched it once. I had another meeting I had to get to, but I think Indira's sister was the one who messaged me on Twitter and made me aware of it. What I saw was absolutely appalling. I mean, what I saw in this video was somebody walking up to the trooper and saying something, which of course there's no sound. And then this young woman walking away and being arrested as she's walking away. There is no excuse for that. There is no excuse for that. So, you know, that is the kind of thing that has got to stop. And that's another thing. You know, if we had a Polk County attorney who refused to prosecute peaceful protesters and who refused to prosecute journalists, then maybe we wouldn't have the police and the county, you know, the troopers engaging in that kind of behavior because they know it's not going anywhere. And at the bare minimum, we wouldn't have this happening because these people wouldn't be going to trial like the journalist who went to trial, you know, a couple of weeks ago, which never should have ever happened. So there's so much that can be done from the county attorney's office. I have skepticism. I mean, you know, people often encourage me not to be so honest and transparent. I don't care. I'm just, that's the way I am. Like I said, I never thought in a million years I'd ever even want to be a prosecutor, let alone work my butt off for over a year to campaign and run to be a prosecutor. But it's necessary. You know, they say the person who wants the job the least maybe is the one who should have it. And we've absolutely got to get somebody into the Polk County Attorney's Office and every other county attorney's office, hopefully at some point, who looks at forward-thinking, evidence-based practices that actually make our communities safer. Because what we are doing now is not it. And somebody who's willing to put those into practice. So that's what I'm up to. We're exploring right now. I told somebody the other day I'm listing heavily toward running. So I've got another maybe month and a half of talking and listening, mostly listening to community leaders. I had a nice talk with Indira and Jalen the other night, and have talked to several other leaders and have more on the way. I want to know what's happening out there, and I want to know how I can help from the prosecutor's office if I can get there. So I love everybody's support, and yeah, I guess that's all I have to say.
Mike, I know you got a couple questions that folks were, but I do want to say one thing that I think is important here, is there is a narrative that really the establishment puts out for various reasons, that progressive politics works in a lot of places, but the places you really, it doesn't work when you're running for a job like county attorney. And I want to say something, because this is fact. Some of the biggest progressive wins down ballot that both were our revolution candidates and throughout this country over the last 2 years were progressive county attorney candidates in places like Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Michigan, Chicago, the biggest machine town in the world. And the point is, this is the right policy, and it is a winning politics too. And don't let people talk you off of that. I don't mean you, Kimberly. I mean people that would want to support this type of campaign. So with that, Mike, I'm sorry. I just wanted to step in and make sure that was said. And I know there were some questions.
Yeah, there was, but Kimberly answered most of them. Questions, and I think your person, I think Tim was on the line answering the questions, but you talk a little. One question that you really didn't answer was a question from Vanessa, and she says, "What is your stance on ICE separating families and not reuniting children with their parents? What is your plan to end detention of individuals who have been detained by ICE?" If that's a Polk County question.
I was going to say, unfortunately, like I said, even if I win, I'm going to wish I had a lot more jurisdiction and power to do things that I may not have any jurisdiction at all or any control of. As far as I understand, that's a Border Patrol issue. Just to be clear, I'm 100% against separating children from their parents, in case that wasn't obvious. But I don't think I have any power to stop that. If I find out I do, I will do everything I can to stop it. But I don't. That's part of the next 2 months before, if I end up announcing, is doing lots and lots and hours and hours and hours and hours of research to find out exactly what I can do and exactly what I will not be able to do. Because obviously, I want to find out. I need to find out exactly where my jurisdiction ends.
Well, thank you. I think if we could look at the chat board here, I think it's 100% unanimous that they want you to run for Polk County attorneys. So you have our support. You would be a perfect candidate for our Revolution Iowa to get behind with both door knocking, canvassing, phone calling, raising money. You're the kind of candidate that we need. So thank you, Kimberly. I'm going to kick this back to Pete and Tom, and thanks again, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Well, this is Tom.
Tom, can I just say something really super quick? I'm sorry. If I didn't answer your question, if you had a question I didn't answer, please, please, please email me, Kimberly@KimberlyForIowa.com, or message me on Twitter or message me on Facebook, Kimberly@KimberlyForIowa.com, and I would be happy to talk to you when we have more time. That's all.
Great. No, that's fine. I just want to put a little more plug in here that our revolution works on a national level, and then also on the state level and the local chapters. And it's important to keep the momentum going. It does take a little bit of money, and I want to put a little plug in for the movement builder. I'll put a link in. The links have been put in from time to time, but for $5 a month or more, if you want to give, we can support the National Our Revolution with the goal of getting an organizer dedicated to Iowa, so that a lot of these goals and ideas that we've talked about tonight can become more of a reality. And as all of you know, like I said before, it's hard to start some campaigns from scratch. and every little bit of help goes a long way. So I want to also bring up we have a couple of national endorsed candidates that National OR is working for, and one of them is State Senator Karen Carter Peterson in Louisiana. She's running to take the place of Cedric Richmond, who now is working in the White House. And National OR members have been phone banking for her since January. She made it through the primary, and her election is on April 24th. And again, there'll be another link in the chat about phone banking for these nationally endorsed candidates. And I think Pete has another national endorsed candidate that many of us know about that he'd like to say a word about.
As many of you that were part of the Bernie part of this movement, you probably got to know or see State Senator Nina Turner, and really she was the conscience of our campaign, the soul of what we were about. She was the one we could always lean to, maybe when things weren't looking the best, to keep us focused on what was really important. And so there's a place, I think they're going to put it in the chat here, where you can sign up to help the Our Revolution Ohio phone banks. It's a special election because the Congresswoman Marcia Fudge in her district is now in the cabinet. So that's a special election that's going to be held later this year. The phone banking is ongoing now, so any help she can get helps us not just elect another progressive, because that's what we want to do everywhere, but just one of the truly amazing women, just amazing person that I've ever worked with. And I would suggest that highly, and we have actually taken a little bit, some part of that myself in terms of her campaign, volunteering to help with some stuff. So we did want to point that one out very directly to folks as a way that we can help in the national type of elections, but do it right here from Iowa also.
Are we ready to give it back to Mike Olis? You want to tell us about some of the upcoming events and ways that people can get involved?
Yeah, so everybody, thank you for being on tonight's call. We had that weird technical glitch, and I think about 85% of our group stayed together, was able to come back. So calls a little bit longer than normal tonight, and we'd like our calls glitch-free, and so not sure what happened there, but, Iowa, you guys are best organizers in the country, so you just stuck with it and made things happen. So just want to talk about, as we end tonight, how we stay engaged at Our Revolution. We're trying to build this community of activists and concerned citizens and rabble-rousers and troublemakers and everyday people. And so as a national group, every Monday night at 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, we have our Monday night call. And this Monday night, we'll hear from Senator Jeff Merkley. We'll hear from a California State Senator, and then from some of our people who won elections last week. And so every Monday night at 7:30 Central is a great time to gather up and just hang out and hang out with 500 of your closest progressive friends from across the country. And going forward in Iowa, what we want to do is next Wednesday night, so 6 days from tonight, we want to gather together again, not as a public meeting, but more as a strategy session. So if you're interested in getting deeper, more deeply involved with Our Revolution, it's been an intense couple years in Iowa, so I get it. But if you want to, come back and organize in your community, try to win these elections for Indira and for Kimberly if she runs this fall. Would love to meet up again on Wednesday night and just talk about how we can get things going. We have several thousand people in Iowa who read our email every month. We have, several hundred donors in Iowa, and several dozen activists, right? So let's get everybody together. Let's build a people's machine, and let's win some tough elections. I'm in a red state myself that is struggling, so I know what that's like. So how can we go out, defeat Republicans, transform the Democratic Party, and have some fun together and keep things going? So next Wednesday night, we'll gather again, for a strategy session. It won't be webinar style, so everybody will have a chance to really get to know each other a little bit more deeply and talk about where we go from here. So that's next Wednesday. You'll get an email from us about it if it's not already in the chat. So we'll see you Monday or Wednesday if you want to keep getting involved. Yeah, please become a card carry member of our revolution. It's important that we all donate together, organize together, and have some fun so that we can keep this thing going in year 5 and beyond. So thank you for everybody who's joined us tonight, and I think that's it for us. One thing that we like to do in our calls. Look here, sorry. On Tuesday night, we're going across the river to Illinois, where Robin Kelly is joining us. Robin Kelly is now the state party chair in Illinois. We just took out the machine, mostly due to their own corruption, and have a progressive now running the state party in Illinois. So that is tomorrow on Tuesday night. So we do these state calls across the country and across the Midwest. But as we wrap up our calls, this is a tradition of ours. Our motto is, when we organize, we win. So if you're with us tonight, if you can unmute yourself, and we'd like to chant out in our calls with a little bit of a chant. So I'll say, when we organize, you'll say, we win. And we'll call it a night. When we organize,
We win.
we win.
When
When
we
we
organize,
We win.
we win. Awesome. So let's be in touch, everybody. Let's keep on organizing, and let's keep on winning. We'll talk to everybody very soon. Have a great night.